playing on the screens behind me is David Arther from Just Ride Bikes, debating with himself whether he wants to take his giant TCR and switch it for a giant Defy, and making the case that maybe all of us who are slightly older and more mature riders should indeed be riding endurance bike rather than bikes billed as race bikes. Now, I have a little bit of an issue with this. One, I don't want to. Because it feels a bit like being told that once you're over 40, you need to buy a Volvo. But also, I don't think it's strictly true. You see, I don't think what he's saying is strictly correct in every circumstance. You see, what I have here is 4 so-called endurance bikes, or what might be called endurance bikes, and they are all very, very different. You see, this is the problem with the term endurance bike. It's getting misinterpreted and translated in different ways. I think what this video is going to be about is how to better understand the term endurance in terms of geometry and features. So make sure that you get the bike that you're really, really looking for, not necessarily what the marketing is telling you. So I'm going to start with this. This might be the best-selling endurance bike. I don't know, we just see quite a lot of them. And it's very, very popular, and I can understand why. The people that we know that ride this often get told they sort of got stereotyped when they went into the shop to buy them. They got a little bit of grey hair, maybe a little bit of a pot belly, whatever it is, and instantly the sales assistant went, oh, you need an endurance bike. Let me walk you towards the Trek Domane, or maybe the Specialized Roubaix, one of those sort of type bikes. Because the feedback that those sort of customers might give is normally, yeah, I'm looking for something comfortable, keeping fit, riding with the club, and that automatically gets translated, you need an endurance bike. And I guess this has a lot of features and benefits. It's a very easy bike to sell because you have things like ISO speed decouplers, which is allowed the seat post to flex, and you have these little couplers here as well, and there's lots of features on here to really talk about and reassure you that you're getting something comfortable, and lovely wide tyres. So it has what I call the car park appeal, and that is when you ride it around the car park for the first time, these bikes feel super comfortable, and you can instantly imagine yourself riding them for mile upon mile, being very, very comfortable and not getting a sore bum and all of that sort of thing. The problem is when you actually take them out on the road and do some miles on them, that's when people come into us for a bike fit complaining of certain issues where really they probably sort of had the wrong bike to start with. You see, the thing is, this is very high and very short, so you get that initial very comfortable feeling, and it's sort of slightly confidence inspiring. A little bit in the same way why people buy SUVs. They like the higher driving position and you feel a bit safer in them, but ultimately they're not a great driving experience. This is a similar sort of idea. When you give this to a hill, you suddenly start feeling all that flex and all that weight, and it becomes quite cumbersome. Also, when you try to descend, this short width makes it quite hard to get down on the drops. You have to really contort yourself a little bit, and people really struggle to get into a good descending position on these bikes. So I sometimes feel that these would actually be better off sold with a flat handlebar as more of a fitness type bike rather than a sort of a relaxed armchair-esque sort of road race bike. But anyway, I think as long as you know what you're getting, it's okay. But I think these kind of get shoehorned towards people a little bit too much. So the next bike I'm going to talk about is probably most similar to the giant Defy that Dave is talking about. This one's in for a Shimano crank replacement right now, but this is a Canyon Endurace. Similar sort of idea. It's more of a detuned race bike than it is what I'd call an endurance bike. And I think these get pushed towards people who perhaps don't have the hip mobility, shoulder mobility, core strength to ride a race bike, and as a result would normally end up riding with a big stack of spacers and their saddle pushed a bit further forward. So these tend to be a little bit shorter and a little bit taller to help with bike fitting issues. Whereas some people would actually be an awful lot better suited to something like a giant TCR, which now comes with 32mm tyre clearance, and therefore they have that same sort of racy geometry and racy feel, but they can build comfort in by having those wider tyres. And I think sometimes people who might be looking at these could be better served by spending a bit more time in the gym and thinking about their physiology and working on things like their core strength and their hip mobility, and end up riding a much superior bike rather than going for things like this. To me, if you were thinking about the Tredeman as being a bit like an SUV, this is perhaps being told you've got to drive a Volvo. We know it's probably a sensible option, but like, it's a bit boring. And I think that's my problem with these, is that it takes all the fun out of a race bike. Okay, next up, we've had a bike that I featured a lot on this channel, so I'm not going to labour the point, but this in my mind is an endurance bike, because what I understand of endurance is big, long days, tired bodies, lots of miles. So if you're setting out on a 200-kilometre ride, then this is the sort of bike that I think you might want to take with you, unless you're a pro racer, in which case, yeah, you can ride a race bike all day long. Now, for me, the reason I say that is because it is long and it is slack. You can see from the geometry changes from what I've shown you so far, just the wheelbase is longer and it's slack geometry. But if you look, the saddle to bar drop is still pretty aggressive, and so is the reach. So this is still gives me a very efficient riding position. I feel strong, I feel powerful on this, but even when I'm at my most tired, I still feel like I'm in control, and it still feels like I'm putting down some decent speed. So this is most similar to things like the BMC Road Machine, and there's a few other brands who are now developing endurance bikes built around this sort of epic days out. Like imagine doing the Mallorca 312 or a big Grand Fondue, and you just wanted to complete it in the best health possible, maybe doing big multi-day trips. This is the essence of endurance. And again, if you wanted to compare this to a car, in my mind, this is more like a BMW or a Mercedes that you might just put in a straight line and just zoom down the Autobahn. Don't expect it to go around corners with any sort of agility. This is a mile-munching, efficient, straight line speed machine. I can't think of it better. BMW 8 Series probably sums it up quite nicely. And then finally, there's a fairly new category of bike, which is being called all-road or adventure. The Cervelo Caledonia, for instance, this is the Time ADHX, which we've had on the channel before. And this, I think, has some growing appeal. You see, this has very similar road geometry, 73 degrees, but you find it's a little bit higher because the fork is higher and the chainstays are longer to account for bigger volume tyres and mudguards and that sort of thing. So you end up with a slightly longer wheelbase. So it's something between this sort of svelte, skinny, longer wheelbase, but it doesn't have that slack head angle. It still maintains that sort of agile handling, but it's robust enough to also do a little bit of off-road. So if you are really out there on those back roads and encountering all sorts of things, then you can run some really wide tyres, 38 millimeters, sometimes even wider than that, and switch it up depending on the type of adventure. And this is the sort of bike that could do both. The only downside to this really is it's a little bit like this. It's a little bit of a numbed experience if you're used to riding a race bike, but it's a slightly high performance gravel off-road bike. So it's a bit of a weird grey area. But if you do a little bit of all of that and you just want one bike, then this sort of all-road category can be pretty appealing. And again, similar to the giant TCR idea, is that you take something very stiff and immaculate handling and then build the comfort in as you need it by using the tyres and the tyre pressures. And again, going back to our car metaphors, then this is probably the most like a Range Rover. And I'm pretty sure you've all been on the motorway, seeing them zoom down the outside lane of a motorway and then doing something in the countryside. I don't know what they do, but has some sort of off-road capabilities. Not quite a Land Rover Defender, but has definitely got some sort of off-road capacity. We have the high riding position, confident sort of feeling, SUV of the Trek Domane, Specialized Roubaix, that sort of thing. Then we have the giant Defy, the Canyon Endurace, lots of endurance bikes, and that's slightly more relaxed. We know it's a sensible option. We know it's the Volvo estate, the VW Passat estate. It's that sort of a car. We know it's the sensible option sometimes, but it's a bit boring. And then we have things like a proper endurance machine. And if you're doing endurance activities, you buy a bike fit for purpose. And so those sort of bikes do exist. And I see them, and I see this as a slightly growing market, to be honest. And we have the super versatile, somewhat of a Chelsea tractor in terms of its approach, but it's really confidence inspiring, but still exciting, slightly on the heavy side, but will do everything you possibly throw at it, including some off-road work as well. So there we go, those are my thoughts, building upon what David was saying about maybe we should all be riding a more relaxed bike and be honest with ourselves about the type of riding that we do. And when we look at the endurance market as a broader thing, there's an awful lot more to it than just saying, I need an endurance bike. If you like this sort of video, please give it a thumbs up. As always, get down in the comments, let me know what you think, especially your experiences. Share them. There's an awful lot to be learned from reading the comments and getting involved down there as well. So until the next time, take it easy.